Sorry. Wat is dat? Hey. Good morning, darling. Hey. We're gonna go next door and see your uncle. So we've just gotten back from our coffee and we did a couple of groceries. We are staying in the house next door to my brother's place and there was nothing here this morning for breakfast. So we just strolled into town and took the pram with us and came back and caught up with a few friends, and now Kora is sleeping. It was pretty difficult to get her to sleep. She's in a new bed. We expected a lot from her, but she's in a new bed. It's not as dark as what she's used to. It's a little bit warmer than what she's used to because the weather's a little bit warmer here. So we'll see how she goes over the next few days, but she'll definitely be sleeping in a room that's a lot lighter. But anyway, I wanted to talk about how the flight went and maybe pass on some of our tips and tricks as to what we would do differently and what worked really well for us. So the flight itself was 4 hours. We took the carrier with us so that we could have our hands free, and she's more likely to go to sleep, so she's not sleeping if I'm just holding her. You're not allowed to use the carrier during takeoff and landing. They have to be in the infant seatbelt that they provide you. So you wear your normal seatbelt and it actually has an extra loop on it, and then you loop the infant seatbelt around your seatbelt and the baby. So the baby is attached to you during takeoff and landing. The baby either needs to sit forward or you can loosen it enough so that you can actually cradle them. So I tried to feed her during the takeoff and landing, but she did not want to take the boob. She wasn't hungry enough. So I actually used my pinky so that she could suck, and apparently that takes the pressure out of their ears. So she had no issues during takeoff and landing. She had no pain and she wasn't crying. She did get a little bit grizzly during the flight. She does not sleep that well in the carrier. So we were trying to get her to go to sleep, and then she was getting a little bit overtired. All in all, I feel like the flight went pretty well for 4.5 hours sitting down. Plus she was in the carrier while we were boarding and walking around the airport and all of those things as well. We didn't have to use the change table. There was one on the flight, which the flight hostess told us about while everyone was boarding and putting their bags away. And we did not have to use it. She did do a poo towards the end of the flight, and we figured that it would be easier just to wait until we got out of the airport and used the bathrooms instead of trying to squeeze past people. I think if it had obviously happened at the start of the flight, we would have changed her, but we only had another half an hour to go, and I thought she's never really that whingy when she's got a full nappy, so we just waited it out. It also was not like a poo explosion, so we obviously had the choice to let her go that little bit longer before we had to change her. I fed her maybe 2 hours before we got on the flight, and I figured that that would get her through boarding and waiting at the airport, that she wasn't going to be that whingy either. I've got the washing machine on in the background if you can hear that. I felt like that was good timing. I thought if it was long enough before the flight actually took off that she'd be hungry enough again to feed during the takeoff. But in the end, it didn't really phase her that we were taking off, and she was fine. I think the white noise of the airplane like soothed her a lot. She didn't get a lot of noise, and there were a few other babies on the flight that were at times a little bit grizzly, but not enough to disrupt her or wake her up. So yeah, I feel like I would definitely take the carrier again if we were flying. I felt like that was a good decision. There was a family in the row like across the aisle from us, and they didn't have a carrier with them, and they basically had to hold the baby for like 4.5 hours, and there was obviously the mum and the dad there, so they could swap. But I don't know, I just feel like it was easier for both of us to be able to have our hands free and pop her in the carrier, and then she could just sit there. I think at one point she got a little bit warm because she was getting sweaty. The plane was not that cold, but I would definitely do that again. I know with our flight from the Netherlands to Australia, which was a very long stint, she was a lot younger. We had also asked ahead of time if they could organise a bassinet, which was included. You don't have to pay extra for that. You just have to give them enough notice to make sure that they have one on your flight. So we had organised a bassinet through Southern China, which is who we flew with, which was a fantastic airline. And they came out and set up the bassinet after takeoff, and then she laid in that for the first 12 hours to China. And then the second flight, the bassinet was actually broken, the one that they had on board. So she did stay in the carrier for the second flight, but we swapped between us for the second flight. I had like 3 hours of her on my chest, and then she had a bit of a play in between, and then she went down for another stint with Yessa. We're also lucky in that she's breastfed, so we didn't have to bring on board any bottles or formula or anything like that. I know you can get hot water, like boiled water, on a flight, and we would obviously ask for that at the start of the flight, and then by the time it cooled down, you could feed her again. So, but you'd have to look into, if you were formula feeding, what you guys would do. We obviously are able to breastfeed, so that worked in our favour. But yeah, the flight went well. I think it was obviously different to the first time we flew with her because she slept the whole time. This time she was a bit more in a rhythm. She woke up pretty early this morning because of the time difference, so she woke up at her normal time. Actually, she woke up a little bit later than her normal time because she did not sleep that much yesterday. After we got off the flight, we had another 3.5 car ride to get down to where we're staying. So she jumped out of the flight. I gave her a feed and a change at the airport, and then we had to stop halfway through the drive and give her another feed, but she does not go down unless she's like laying down in a quiet room. So she didn't really sleep that much in the car, and then by the time we got home, we were unpacking, the lights were on again, she sort of woke up. So she actually went to bed at like 12 o'clock midnight from her body clock, but it was only 9 o'clock here. So she did all right. We'll see how we're going with the jet lag and what sort of things come up with that, but at this point it hasn't been too much of an issue because it's just one morning where she's woken up a little bit early, and we were obviously already awake as well because we're also a little bit jet lagged. We flew Tiger Air, super budget airline, so obviously things like a bassinet were not included, and we didn't pay the extra to get the premium front row seats where you would normally attach the bassinet to the wall. So we just sort of winged it and wore that choice to fly with a budget airline and just had her on our chest. I think we're going out for lunch later today, and the weather is starting to look really nice, so I think we may go to the beach either today or tomorrow, and it will probably be her first time in the water, so I'm really looking forward to that. And so I guess that was our flight experience. If I think of anything else, we are flying again in another 4 weeks for 5 hours to Thailand, so maybe that will be different, and we might pack a little differently. I think we packed more than enough. Anyway, we had a bunch of nappies and a change of clothes which we used once we got to the airport, so in terms of packing I think we did all right. That was our flight experience.